Here we have it. The man of the hour. He's a creator, director, producer, writer, showrunner. And on top of it all, he's one of the creators of the hit show on Netflix, Cobrakai's. Please welcome my man Jon Hurwitz for giving me a second opportunity to interview him. How are you, baby?
I'm good. Good to talk to you, Eddie.
Oh, Jon, when you were a kid growing up, and when you told your parents, "Mom and Dad, when I grow up, I want to be what?" What were you thinking back then? Because before we talk about Cobra Kai, let's turn back the clock.
Well, I mean, first, when I was really little, when I was, preschool, it was I want to be a children's book author because
Mm,
I loved children's books at the time, and I just wanted to, tell stories and that the kinds of things that my peers would enjoy, that other kids would like. And then became more business minded. I became really big into baseball cards, and I would buy and sell cards. And when I was in, I don't know, fourth or fifth grade, I started a baseball card mutual fund where I sold a bunch of shares of stock for $2 each and sold 100 shares. I had $200 of cash, and I bought and sold cards for a year and doubled everyone's money. I was just like into making money. That was sort of like my thought because I was good at math and I was just business minded. So my parents were like, "Oh, like you're business minded, you should be an investment banker." So my headspace after that was like, "Okay, I'm going to be an investment banker because that's a job where I can make a bunch of money, I could take care of myself, and was just focused on my future in that way." I ended up, you know, throughout high school, it was just try to get into the best college possible. I ended up going to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I was a finance major. I was going to become an investment banker. But the whole time that was going on, I always had these creative outlets in the background. And, when I was in high school, I met Hayden Schlossberg, who is my partner, writing partner and directing partner on, dating back to Harold and Kumar and our earliest scripts and everything I've done in my career through Cobra Kai. Uh, and back then we, on the side started talking about, hey, maybe we should write movies. Wouldn't that be great? But it just didn't feel practical being a couple guys from Jersey. So we're like, okay, well, we'll have these other jobs first. Well, and then, hopefully make some money and then be able to, retire early. And we didn't even factor like, oh, like you might have like a family and like have expenses. And we didn't think
right.
about that. It was like, oh, we'll just make money. And then like, once we've made enough money, we can like try to become screenwriters and that kind of thing. And then midway through college, we were like, wait a second, like that might take a while. So then we started writing together and, luckily we pursued this path and here we are.
You and Hayden, you guys actually met in high school, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, we did.
like, how did you actually meet? Like, did you see like a hot girl pass by and you were like, "Whoa," or like, what was it? What'd you guys do?
We met the way all cool dudes do on the debate team,
Hmm.
as that's how it is in high school, of course. No, we were, we kind of knew each other a little bit. There were a couple times where we sat at like the same lunch table, but didn't really know each other and didn't, have much of a relationship. But it wasn't until we both like happened to join debate team our junior year of high school where we got to know each other and we'd go to these debate meets together and realized that we had a shared sense of humor and found like the ridiculousness of like this world that we were in and all the
Hmm.
different characters, and we would start like inventing like weird backstories about like all of the competitors that we had and like from the other schools, and just found that we had a real like simpatico sense of humor, and started bonding through that. But the first time, it's funny, the first time we went to like either of us went to each other's house was Hayden's parents had bought the pay-per-view special Howard Stern's Miss New Year's Eve pageant.
Oh God.
And I remember way back when. So yeah, Hayden and I went over to Hayden's house because they had recorded it, and that was the first time I was actually at Hayden's house. Was to watch a Howard Stern pay per view.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a great introduction, right? How old were you at that time?
We were what probably 17, 16,
17.
17.
And during high school, like, okay, so tell me, you're a diehard baseball fan, right? You love your New York Mets.
Yes.
Now,
Oh, hardcore.
why'd you pick the Mets over my diehard, my team, which is the Yankees? I mean, I would imagine, like, how'd it happen? Where your parents are like, you're rooting for the Mets, not the Yankees.
No, it's so funny because my parents actually both grew up in the Bronx.
Oh,
So
wow.
they were Yankees fans, their whole lives. But my dad has always been more of just a baseball fan in general. And I remember I lived for 7 years. I lived outside of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was from Jersey, moved to Pittsburgh. And during that 7 year period, for a period of time, my brother and my dad started collecting coins, and we go to like these coin shows. And I like kind of collected coins with them, but I wasn't that interested in that. And then I started buying like packs of baseball cards at these coin shows, and it was right around the time that the '86 World Series was like about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad at the time was the Yankees weren't great then, the Mets were great. And so he got me into this like New York baseball team that like he was rooting for at the time. And I got into the Mets, even though I was this kid in Pittsburgh. And I spent the next bunch of years when like it was like Bonds, Bonilla, and Van Slyke, and Pittsburgh was all doing well, and the Mets were their main rival. And I was that little kid with the Doc Gooden jersey going to the Three River Stadium, wearing that jersey defiantly because I was proud to love my Mets, and I've been loyal all these years. So I've lived through all the bad times, the few good times, and hopefully we're about to head into a much more successful stretch going forward.
Well, you know what? Speaking of that, I have a surprise for you. All right, I'm gonna introduce you to somebody that you're gonna really love. This guy, Doc Gooden. Meet my man, Jon Hurwitz. John, meet Doc Gooden.
Buddy? And
This
John,
is
what's up,
amazing.
guys?
What's
Everything's
up,
well.
man?
And first, I want to thank you for being a Mets fan, and thank you for being a fan of mine. I really appreciate that, buddy.
Oh my God. I think I told Eddie last time we spoke that when I was a kid, I had this huge Doc Gooden collection. I had all your cards, anything that I could find that had you on it. I have some autographs over the years. So that was, it was a huge thing for me. And I remember you had this video that you made that was about your life and your family. That I had it on VHS, watched it over and over again. So yeah, no, big time fan, and continue to this day.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. I'll have to get you one of these hats we came out with. I'll definitely get that to you, too. I'll get it to Eddie and get it to you. And hopefully
awesome.
next year they have fans in. I'll love to invite you to a game.
Oh, that would be the best. That would be the best. I miss going to the ballpark, man. I'm sure you do too.
Well,
definitely. I'm still a huge fan myself. Obviously, I'm a Met at heart. And if I'm not at the game, I'm watching the game. So I still love it. But yeah, next year we'll definitely get to some games for the opening gates for the fans.
Oh, would love that. That'd be amazing.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
well, here you have it, Doc. Listen, thanks for stopping by. Listen, John, any classic questions you have for him? I know I put you on the spot, but I wanted to surprise you.
Oh, it's an amazing surprise. Oh my God. Just the memory, even though it wasn't a Mets memory, that no hitter, I'll never forget. I'll never forget that experience, that watching you and just being stressed out every moment of it. It's just a great thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was one of the highlights of my career. Obviously, like I said, I'm a man at heart, but that no hitter was I don't know if you know the story, but I was actually supposed to go home and be with my father, who had been on dialysis for 15 years. He was having open heart surgery the next day. And because of his health, they thought if he didn't have the surgery, he definitely would make it a week. And if he had the surgery, he might not make it. And that morning, I thought, you know what? He'll probably want me to pitch. And so I had my flight to go home, but I called Joe Torre, who was the manager at the time, said I was coming in to pitch. He said, no, go home, be with your dad, take as much time you need. When you're ready, come back. I said, no, I'll see you tonight. And who knows, I was trying to be a no-hitter, and my dad ended up passing away, but the last game he saw me pitch was that no-hitter.
It's an amazing story. I remember hearing that, and it must have been so many emotions on the mound, but you tuned it out and you delivered for him in that game. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was because I started off that year. I don't know if you remember. I started off 0-3, and they were thinking about either sending me to the minors or putting me in the bullpen, which they did. Unfortunately, David Cohn got the aneurysm, the rotation, and then I think it was my third start back in. That's when I had the no hitter. But you guys, when I say you guys, I mean you and the fans played such a big plus in my career. I mean, you guys played a big part of that. With all the energy you guys gave me, especially at Shea Stadium, There's no better feeling pitching when I got 2 strikes on the batter and everyone standing up, clapping, and wanting to strike out. That just gave me so much energy, and I appreciate you guys for that.
Oh, awesome. Well, we love you to this day, man, and glad that you're doing well. And it's awesome seeing you on here. This is surreal and great.
All
right.
Thank you.
Hey,
Happy
Doc.
holidays to you and your family. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, is that it, John? Are you good?
I'm better than good.
All right. Well,
I'm
listen, Doc.
absolutely thrilled.
Thank you for the time.
Yes, sir.
Cobra Kai's coming out, in, I think, in 48 hours, season 3. So make sure you watch it. I'm sure you're a fan of the Karate Kid.
Oh, most definitely. I'll
All
definitely do that. And Eddie, get my information. I'm serious. I'd like to take him to a game next year.
All right, I got you.
That would be great. Love
Okay,
that.
buddy.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah, we'll meet
Take
soon.
care, Doc.
My pleasure. Looking forward. All right, guys.
All right.
Very cool.
So here you go. I made your dream come true. All right. I introduced you
You did.
to your idol, and I'm sure you're gonna tell ralphmacchio and all the Mets fans like you don't know what exactly happened, right? I know you're gonna brag about that.
I'm definitely going to talk to Ralph about that. Yeah, it's awesome. One of the fun things about making the show is, I've gotten to know Ralph really well. I went to a game a couple years, 2 years back, where he threw out the first pitch, and I got to be on the field as he was throwing out the pitch to Billy Zabka, and it was an amazing experience. And then, after that, I ended up the next year went to a game. My family and Ralph's family, we caught a Mets game together, and it's fun having another Mets fan in the mix to talk about everything that's going on.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Me being a diehard Yankee fan, I am actually happy for the Mets, and I'll tell you why. Because the fact that Cohen psychologically is thinking, F the Yankees, I am Mr. New York now. He's going to have Steinbrenner's mentality. And he's going to say, I'm stepping up. But then that's a good way for us Yankee fans because I know Cashman's going to step up. So it's going to be back to the Battle of New York,
We can only hope so. I'm somebody, I always say, like, I don't root against the Yankees unless they're playing against the Mets. I've never gotten tied up in that. But it's always good when both teams in New York are good.
Yeah.
It just makes it all the more exciting for those times when they do play against each other.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm glad because you know what? I met Mattingly, my idol, 2 years ago. It was at Citi Field, and I know the feeling of you. Now, trust me, what Doc just told me, give him my information, he will take you to the game. He's that guy. He's a man of his word. I got you.
Dude, I can't wait for that. That's going to be awesome. No, it's funny because, when I was living in Pittsburgh, I was really into the baseball cards, as I told you. But when I moved back to New Jersey, all my buddies, who were like my baseball card friends, they moved into the autograph game. So they would go to, they'd go to the hotels that like the players were staying at, and they'd wait outside and they'd get all the autographs on baseballs and 8x10s and magazines, and they'd go to the airport. Like, it was just a thing that all my baseball card buddies were doing. And it was like, they, for collecting, to make some scratch. It was a fun kind of thing that they had. So all my good friends met Doc back in the day. They would they would be at the hotel and everything like that. I never had the opportunity. So this was a thrill to talk to him today.
Well, listen, I do everything I can. I'm all about for others, John, and for you to come back again, because I know your schedule's stacked. I mean, the show is just off the hook, and, but another thing about Jersey, New York, how the hell can you eat this? I don't get it. I can't handle that. What'd you do with this?
My when I was living in Pittsburgh, my grandparents would come and visit us. And my parents both grew up on White Castle burgers. It was, they had that experience. So I'll never forget when I was in Pittsburgh, my grandparents, this was before they sold the burgers at the supermarket. They would go to White Castle. They'd get like 100 burgers that were like, freeze wrapped or whatever it was. And they'd fly and they'd have their luggage. And then they'd have this like box of White Castle burgers that they'd arrive from Jersey with. So in our freezer in Pittsburgh, we had the burgers. So it was something that always just meant a lot to me, and I have warm feelings from my childhood about that. But then
And
You know,
then,
it was.
and then you
I
pass
was
this.
just.
Then you pass it on to your daughter. Are you? What are you killing? Are you killing her right here? What are you doing?
I did pass it on to my daughter. Yeah, no, it's so funny. So we make Harold and Kumar, which was fun, and it was cool because we wrote it into the script from the beginning. It was always Harold and Kumar go to White Castle, and we're like, well, of course White Castle should do it. They should know who like goes to White Castle.
Hmm.
People who've maybe had a few too many drinks or maybe indulged in some weed. That crowd, the late night crowd, they're open all night. So what we were lucky about that we didn't know was that White Castle is a family owned business. It's not a corporation or like a franchise where different people, the same family owns all of the White Castles in the
Hmm.
country. So we were lucky that like there was one family, they had to make a decision if we could get the rights. So we got the rights to them. And way back then, when the movie came out, myself and Hayden and our director Danny Liner and John Cho and Cal Penn, we all got inducted into the White Castle Hall of Fame. So
That's
I
awesome.
have I have in my kitchen a plaque on the wall of like that I'm a Hall of Famer. And this a few months back, my mother-in-law lives in Scottsdale, and they opened a White Castle there, and I brought my family to White Castle for the first time. So my daughter in that picture that you saw had the frozen burgers for the first time. But since then they've had the experience rolling into a White Castle with a Hall of Famer. That's a big deal. And we were treated very, very well over at White Castle, and we all had a blast.
Oh, what a lifestyle! I go to White Castle. I'm telling you right now, I got strong winds, hurricane. It's just killing me. I can't do it. The last time I ate White Castle was probably I'm 45, probably 30 years ago.
Well, it's funny. I've had my time on and off with it, and it's probably something that I can't do regularly now. But it tastes like childhood.
So, if someone asked you, what do you miss about the East Coast besides baseball, the Mets? Would you say White Castle is your number one pick?
Definitely not. I mean, I would say, my family, of course, and friends from back east, like that crowd. There's a certain, you know, uh, mentality that I connect with, that I grew up with. A certain, rough around the edges kind of, you
Right.
know, say what you mean kind of thing, and you don't get offended,
Hmm.
kind of vibe that I grew up with, that not everybody has. But beyond that, the food, the Italian food.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so different. You know, pizza, bagels.
Yeah.
Just certain specific foods that, like, I miss the East Coast version of.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, nothing like the West Coast pizza. I mean, it's not even close, but it's all right. I
Mhm.
think there's a place called Vito's and Larchmont.
Yes, those two are both excellent. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love I love that.
So now, when you're in college, you actually meet the other creator of the show, which is Josh
Yeah, Josh Heald.
Heel, and that was your college roommate.
He lived 3 doors down from me freshman year in the dorms, and we bonded that first year, and then we lived together the rest of college.
And then that's when you introduced him to Schlossberg, right?
Yeah, so yeah, Hayden went to the University of Chicago, and he always jokes around that his entire social life was coming to UPenn for spring fling. That every year
Mhm.
he would come to, 3 or 4 days, he would be in Philadelphia, and because at University of Chicago they have a slogan where fun goes to die. So at our school, like, UPenn is not exactly the biggest party school in the world, but for him, it was like, paradise. So yeah, he would come every year to Spring Fling starting freshman year, and that's when Josh and Hayden met for the first time, and we've all been tight ever since.
That's an amazing story. Did you have any other offers? I mean, any other colleges like a Ivy League type of school that you got accepted to?
I applied early decision to Penn,
Mm.
so I didn't end up applying anywhere else. I had applications that I was going to put out, or maybe I submitted them, but like once you get an early decision, the other schools know that you're already going to that place.
So 3 months before graduating college, you guys wrote a script, right? Called Filthy,
Yes.
right? It got sold. And now you're like, oh shit, we're gonna make money now, man. So you're moving you moved to Hollywood. What was your day job once you got there?
Writing was our day job. It was, we sold that first script, and it was for like enough money that it was like enough money where we said like for a year, this is an income for like a guy, for a early 20s guy who doesn't have many needs. The two of us got an apartment together. We didn't eat expensive food. We didn't, go out and party a whole lot. We were just focused on writing more than anything else. And, we're not, fancy folk.
Oh,
So, it was one of those things that, like, we figured, okay, we have a year to kind of make it work. And, in that year, we ended up selling a couple other things. So it was always making just enough money to not have to have that other job. And then 2 years in, we sold Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle as a script. And that script kind of changed our careers overnight, in the sense that before we had some fans around town, but Harold and Kumar was one of those scripts that, to this day, we'll take meetings and we'll have people tell us, oh, I'll never forget, I was an assistant at the time, where I was a young producer, and I read Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, and I had never seen a script quite like that. And it was instantaneous, where, we went from guys who, like, you'd have to really hustle to try to get a rewrite job, to people throwing rewrite jobs at us aggressively. So it, like, at that point, it was like, okay, I knew that you no longer had the fear of having to, like, get that other day job.
so John, my question is, did you struggle in Hollywood?
I mean, struggle's a relative term,
But I'm
you
just
know.
saying, look at it. You're what? You're 24, 25. You sold the script. Harold and Kumar, how old were you when they accepted the script?
Well, we sold the first script when we were 22, and then we sold Harold,
Oh my
and
god.
Kumar when we sold two other scripts in between, and then we sold Harold and Kumar when we were 24 or 25. So we didn't have the struggle of most in Hollywood. Our struggles were you know the paycheck to paycheck nature of, like,
Mhm.
okay, well, we got to sell another thing, or we're going to have to, like, have those day jobs. We were very blessed and lucky that, those early scripts, you know we were able to sell it. I guess whatever we were doing was working enough to keep us afloat. So, our struggles in Hollywood were the frustrations of, you sell something, you put your heart and soul into it, you're working your butt off on it, and you believe in it more than anything, and then it doesn't get made, or you go through development hell and that kind of stuff. And even when you had success, even once you've had a bunch of movies get made, and you feel like you're hitting a stride, um, you can still go through a stretch where you've sold a couple other movies, and yeah, you're getting paid well to write a movie, but you were expecting, oh, well, this would get made because I have a track record now, and then that doesn't get made, and that doesn't get made, and that
Yeah,
doesn't made, and then you find yourself again, like, am I done? Is this a thing where, like, I'm gonna it's run its course? Because in Hollywood, you never know where your next paycheck's going. You're as
exactly.
good as you were recently. So,
John, a lot of the people really don't understand. I mean, it takes, overnight success is like 10 years, right? They say in Hollywood. And even though you had success, I mean, it's like a process, Okay, I got a script. Okay, now are they going to greenlight it? You know what I mean? Are they going to do all that? And it's like, and all of a sudden, the last minute, you one of your leads. No, I don't want to do it. Right? That's where you were at that level, right?
oh, totally. I mean, to this day, I mean, like, we have projects that we've written recently that, like, it's finding that actor
Mm-hmm.
who's meaningful to get your project greenlit. Maybe, it's I haven't been, pursuing, I haven't been putting together certain projects, post, say Cobra Kai moving to Netflix, which has taken everything to a whole other level for us. But, when you're trying to make a movie, for example, especially something that you're aiming for the big screen, and, hopefully will have that lifestyle again, sometime next year. Um, you know, for a studio, there'll be like five people that are meaningful to get your movie greenlit, and if you don't get one of those five people, then you're out of luck.
Yeah.
And
It's
there's
all it
some
takes is
film.
it takes one guy to say no, and then that's it. See ya.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes, you put all this work in for a year or multiple years. I mean, I could use an example. There was a project Blockers that we made a few years ago. That
Hmm.
took 5 or 6 years to get made, from like the moment that we all started that project to getting it made, because it was like we had this great script. We were, Hayden and I did a bunch of rewrites to it. Everyone was ready to go. And, we were trying to find actors, and it was like, okay, well, you're looking for people who are like in their early 40s, but like a lot of those actors have already done, say, The Hangover, or they've already done Horrible Bosses, or they've already done that one night crazy adventure R-rated comedy thing. And so those are the people that are meaningful to a studio. So it's like, then it's like, okay, you have to have like, us producing, and Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg producing, and Kay Cannon directing. And then it's like, having the trust of a studio being like, okay, well, Leslie Mann, she's a star. And
Yeah.
John Cena and Ike Barinholtz, well, yeah, they're stars, but they're like not proven and starring in a movie yet. So it's
Hmm.
like all the things have to come together to get that movie made. It's very tough to get a feature made.
Yeah, exactly. I hear you. Now, you got your directing skills. As far you were actually on set every day, which was that the first Harold and Kumar film that you were on set every day, and you learned a lot from the directors
Yes.
by observing, right?
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. So, most writers, you write a script, you sell it, and then the studio hires other people to rewrite you, and it's eventually, you're not even really a part of the process anymore. We were lucky enough to have the opposite kind of experience, where our movie was getting made because people around town fell in love with the script. They
Hmm.
knew from the beginning that we were not going to have big famous stars, because the nature of who Harold and Kumar were.
Hmm.
John Cho and Cal Penn were not household names at that time, and there weren't Asian American stars that were going to get it made. So people were making it because of the script, and the director was attracted to it because of the script. And he was a guy, Danny Liner. He was the best, such a great man, who uh, worked a lot in television. And in television, the writer is king.
Yeah.
So the thing that was really wonderful about Danny was he insisted that we be there with him every day. He wanted us sitting behind him every day, giving thoughts. And we were sort of told beforehand by the producers, just lay back. We know you guys are opinionated. We know you guys have a vision, but like, this is his job. He's directing the movie. And then an hour into the shoot, he turned to us. He's like, "What are you guys doing? Like, you're just sitting there quietly. I want to hear your thoughts after every take."
Wow.
So it was the opposite experience that most people have. So yeah, we learned from Danny quite a bit about, the job of being a director. And the biggest thing that we learned was really, having a vision and being able to articulate that vision to a wide range of people, whether it's people at the studio, whether it's to the actors, whether it's to, every department head. And that was when we learned that that was the job, we felt really confident that we'd be able to direct ourselves.
And then that came to you directed which film? You and
Hayden and I, the first movie we directed was Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay.
oh, okay, man, that movie was hilarious. Oh my god. Yeah. Wow,
Mhm.
so it's amazing like that, like LeBron James says your experience is your best teacher. So you being on set every day, learning from that director, taking notes, putting in your mind, and then next thing you know, you could direct the film.
It was awesome. It was really through that experience where the people who were financing the movie and the studio saw kind of who Hayden and I were, and they knew that we were more than just sort of writers of this project, that we had
Mhm.
the vision for what this was, and that people were taking their cues from us. Even after the first cuts of the movie came in, we would see those cuts, and then we'd write 30 pages of notes of like how to make the jokes land better, how to make it land more emotionally better, where the music cues should come in. And
Right.
we were basically filmmakers without having ever made a film. And so when we wrote the script for Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay, we didn't think it was realistic that we were going to get hired as directors, but we had a meeting with the executives at New Line, and we were just sort of casually saying, "Yeah, if we were directing, we would do this. If we were directing, we would do that." Not even trying to get the directing job because we didn't think it was a possibility. And they said, "Well, what if you were directing the movie? Like, would you be interested in directing the movie?" We're like, "Yes."
Oh my.
So We ended up basically, though, it wasn't like we didn't get the job that day. They said, put together a presentation as to your vision for the movie. And then we had our very first director meeting ever. And, we told them the whole movie. They knew that we knew the script intimately. They knew that we had formed a very close bond with John Cho and Cal Penn and Neil
Hmm.
Patrick Harris, and that they knew that we would work our butts off to make sure that it was awesome.
Wow, that's such an amazing story, John. I'm very happy for you guys. I mean, seriously, like, not that many people could say stuff like this. You know what I mean? Like moving to Hollywood and doing all this stuff, and it just coming. Here's the thing: what I learned as an actor in Hollywood, you're only good as your last performance, your last film, your last TV show on Broadway, your last show on in theater. That's the bottom line. And like you said earlier, you don't know when you're going to work in this business. Just don't know.
No, it's true. I mean, it's one of those things that, like I said, we've had these stretches in time where you're like, oh, like I'm on top of the world. I was just at this premiere of this movie that I wrote and directed. I watched an audience go nuts for it. I was at test screenings and it's like, everyone's going to love it. And then it comes out at the box office. And like, Harold and Kumar is a perfect example. The first Harold and Kumar, the studio hired they got these limos to take us from theater to theater around town so we could all celebrate that opening night. And we realized like our movie was like not in the best theaters in town. And we went from like half empty theater to half empty theater. And we had already been commissioned to write the Harold and Kumar sequel at that point. And we just knew that that movie was not doing well at the box office right away. And they didn't even wait until Monday. They called us on Saturday after that first night and they said, stop writing the sequel. And we were just like, oh, okay. But like, we're like, but no, you've seen the audience. When there's an audience watches this movie, they love it. And like, it tested through the roof. Like, it's going to be huge on DVD. You'll see. And they're just like, kid, you don't know what you're talking about. And we were lucky that like each year that went by for a couple years, it did perform well on DVD. And it became that kind of thing where they're like, oh, it became that cult hit. It became that thing that warranted them spending the money on a sequel. But like, we had that experience where that first night you're like, they're telling you Harold and Kumar's dead. We continued to believe in it, but we were also naive. Like, we could have very easily been wrong about that. And we had other jobs. We were selling other scripts. We had other movies that like you were hopefully going to get made, but they didn't get made. And we were lucky that when they called us with, yeah, they're like, hey, Harold and Kumar 2, like, we'll do it theatrical. You guys up for it? And we're like, yes. So, you have these moments like you could look at the filmography and be like, oh, like, oh, they've had a perfect career. It's been awesome and it's been great. And most of it, there's been plenty of awesomeness, but plenty of, like depressed nights when your project is almost made and then dies or doesn't ever get made,
John,
happens
let me
all the
ask you
time.
this: you met your wife when you were younger. When did you meet your wife?
I met my wife the same exact week we sold Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, the script.
Oh wow! So okay, because I
The
was about to say, you
best
know,
week of my life.
like because when you're young in Hollywood, and if a girl says, "So what do you do for a living?" You're like, "I'm a screenwriter," right? And the next thing you know, well, what'd you write, right? And you'd be like, "I wrote Harold and Kumar." Then all the girls are like, "Oh, how are you? Anyway, here's my number if you ever want to talk." You know what I mean? Like that's what
Well,
I'm trying to get to. You know what I'm saying?
no, no, it's so funny. Like we sold that first script when we were 22, and we come out after college, and um, I remember like like navigating the social scene a little bit, and we were like, uncomfortable like bringing up that we wrote a screenplay. We didn't know like how to drop that into conversation. That we even sold a screenplay. It was like to sell a screenplay in town was a big deal.
Yeah.
So like we were never the guys, and we knew other people who like didn't really sell a screenplay who were able to bullshit and basically pretend that they did or whatever. And we saw them like, with girls like crazy and all that stuff. And we were just like these guys who like were, too awkward and uncomfortable to like, even express our success. And then, yeah, I met my wife the same week that we sold Harold and Kumar. So I never had that stretch of like,
Okay.
okay, like
Right.
made a movie that people know, and I'm on the dating scene. But I would imagine it would have been very different than it was those first couple of years.
Well, it's a blessing you met your wife. You got two beautiful girls. Did you hit on her or she hit on you?
a girl that I went to high school with, went to college with her.
Okay.
So yeah, they both went to the University of Michigan. So I got
Oh.
I had been back in Jersey and I had lunch with an old friend, and she's like, "How's dating going on in LA?" I was like, could be better." And she's like, "Well, I have a couple of friends who like are, at Michigan," because she was 2 years younger than me. She just graduated. She's like, "Yeah, like, I know this girl who I think you'd like a lot,
Mhm.
I'll give you her number." So I just called her up and I asked her out, and, had never seen her before, had never seen a picture or anything like that, just
Ah,
asked her out, and we went out and we've been together ever since that date.
so it was a long distance relationship at the time when you were in
No,
LA?
no, 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 no. She had graduated. So I was living in LA, and she had just graduated Michigan. So she had moved back. She was from Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so she had been back in LA for like 2 or 3 months, and we went on our first date. It was like August 23rd of 2000. Was it 2002? Yeah, 2002, August 23rd, 2002.
It's an amazing story. So now, August 23rd, speaking of that, I mean, August 28th, that's my birthday, and I think Cobra Kai came out on Netflix. Was it August 28th this past?
Was that one? Was that it? It's all a blur. It might have. I think
I think
so.
so. Yeah,
I
I
think you're
think.
right. I think you're right.
Yeah. But we're going to talk about Cobra Kai right now. Now, here's the thing, John. I know you're a fan of the film The Karate Kid. So am I. You and I are close to age. You're driving on Sunset Boulevard. You look at a billboard, and you're like, were you with Schlossberg in the car or some shit like that? Where were you at the time? Like, were you inside the car with your guys or no?
I think so. It was one of those things. We had talked about Cobra Kai as a movie since our early 20s. Like,
Right.
we loved Karate Kid. We all bonded over it the way most, a lot of people in our age range did. And we had this big fascination with Billy Zabka dating back to high school. It wasn't just like Karate Kid, it was just one of the guys. It was
Yeah.
back to school. It was the fact that he played this kind of like, you know, 80s jerk
Mm-hmm.
in all these movies. And we just found it really fascinating. We found him really entertaining. And we always loved the idea of there being like, you know, that story about the bully from your high school. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
happens to that bully? And we're like, wouldn't it be amazing to like tell Johnny Lawrence's story? Like, go in, do a movie called Cobra Kai, where you get to know Johnny present day and see where his life went and see where LaRusso's life went. And it was always a movie idea. But by then, we kind of knew enough about the film business, how it's, it's hard to get a movie made unless it's like a handful of guys as the stars of it. So we just kind of like forgot about it, didn't do anything about it. Then the Jaden Smith movie comes out, the remake of Karate Kid, and we're like, okay, well, that's never going to happen. And then some years go by, and there was never another Jaden Smith movie. So we're like, okay. And then we're driving on Sunset, and we see a billboard for Fuller House, and we see, Kimmy Gibbler on a billboard. No knock on Kimmy Gibbler. I was a fan of hers on Full House back in the day, but she hadn't been in anything in a long time. And she's able to be on a billboard on like of a big show on the Sunset Strip. And we're like, well, Ralph Macchio obviously should be able to be, and Billy Zabka obviously should be able to be. So what if we took that movie idea we had all those years ago, and we turned it into, a long form TV show, which allows us to like dig deep into both of their lives and dig deep into lives of a whole new generation. And we called our agent up and we said, hey, can you find out who has the rights to Karate Kid? And took a series of meetings, and the rest is history.
And that was it. Was in Sony, right? Sony Studios.
It was Sony. So it was, Overbrook, which is Will Smith's company, controlled the rights after the Jaden Smith movie. So we first met over there with Caleb Pinkett, who is an exec over there. Great, great dude. Grew up like we did, loving the Karate Kid. And we pitched him all of our ideas, just sort of rapid fire. And the whole time he's sort of nodding and smiling. And then after like 40 minutes of us just talking nonstop, he says, okay, I love this. I love this. I love this. He starts listing all these little specific things that we pitched a half hour earlier, remembered all the minor names of everybody, and like totally 100% got it. He's like, I'm going to get our company to sign off on this. And he did. And then it's like, okay, we got to go to Sony next. So then we pitched to Sony, get them on board. And they're like, okay, well, good luck getting Ralph Macchio to agree to this. And Zabka, we knew a little bit by this point.
Mm-hmm.
So we were confident that we'd be able to get him. And so we sat with him, we talked it through, and he was on board. And we had to, fly ourselves to New York to meet with Ralph Macchio. And first it was convincing him that, okay, these guys who made all these hard R-rated comedies features are coming to pitch you like a Karate Kid TV series, and, convinced his manager to support us having a meeting with him. We sat down with him and we had this 3.5 hour lunch where we talked through basically what you saw in season 1 of the show, our whole vision for it. And he got on board. He understood what we were doing. He had heard a million pitches for future Karate Kid shows or movies for years, and this was different than anything he had heard before. And he felt like it was the right time and the right take, and we were lucky that he signed off.
John, when you pitched in the beginning, you could read people well. Was this like while he was listening? Was he like, I don't know, maybe like
He would.
what hour? What hour do you think you said, okay, we got him?
It's interesting. We had watched enough interviews with Ralph before then to know the general temperature and like what was important to him. And it was the same things that were important to us inherently as storytellers, that, the story's fresh, that as an actor, he's going to get to do things that are different, that, yes, we're going through the Cobra Kai side, but we're also going to be focusing on Daniel's story as well and exploring the big thing that really, I think, connected for him was when we were talking about that we're going to see a Daniel LaRusso dealing with the absence of Mr. Miyagi in his life. And when he understood that we were, approaching it not from a, this isn't a parody that we're talking about here. We're talking about like diving deep into this character that he's lived with for, 35 years and explore, what happens when you basically lose a parent or lose a mentor, somebody who has been there for you that you always turn to during tough times. And now you're the adult and you're trying to navigate, challenges in your own life. And I think that we felt that that conversation was, going well the entire time. But it was really when we got into that stuff and we were mind melding there. Now we left that 3.5 hour lunch and he's like, okay, let me think about it and get back to you. Then 3 or 4 days later, we spoke on the phone with him again for another 2 hours. And it was at the end of that call that he signed on to it. But Ralph is a very smart, very thoughtful person. Like he didn't take this lightly. Like this, he's brought smiles to people's faces for a very long time because of this character. And he would never want to do anything that tarnishes not only his work, but the work of Pat Morita, the work of John Avildsen, the work of that entire team. So it was important to him that if he was going to put that gi back on, that headband back on, that it had to be the right moment.
John, what I'm really impressed by is Zabka's vulnerability on the show, because you could see that bully, in the original Karate Kid. And in the beginning, I love how you guys, when he's saying you guys are a bunch of P word, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Sholo was like, it was so awesome. But you could see, I love the fact that in Encino, by the way, for the viewers listening out there, Encino, California is expensive, especially the parts, and the part that his father was his stepfather on the show?
His stepfather.
It's like you come from a rich, super filthy rich family, and now you're in Reseda now, pretty much have nothing, and you're just trying to survive in the world. But his vulnerability, I think, is what captured the fans. Because here's a bully, but also he's like, hey, I am human too. I have a heart too. You know what I mean? And right? You agree?
I was going to say the key for us was making the audience who has loved Daniel LaRusso and who has hated Johnny Lawrence for all these years to genuinely become emotionally invested in his story right away. So it was, reestablishing him as like, whoa, like we saw this guy who rich kid, had the life that, had the world in the palm of his hand, basically, last time we saw him, despite, whatever things went down, like losing a tournament and having problems with his sensei, but like he came from a good background, to find out like, oh, you know, he's dealing with problems that many of us deal with, and doesn't have it so good. And it was important to us to sort of learn that behind the scenes of that movie that we saw, that we didn't know the full story of what was going on in
I,
Johnny Lawrence's
yeah.
house. That we didn't know, like, and that really came from like just maturing ourselves as young men. That Hayden and I, like I said, we went to high school together, so we remember the bullies from our high school. And
Mhm.
when you're in your like early 20s and you're thinking about things, you realize, that kid who was a total asshole to me, like, had a bad home life. Like his father was, a drunk and abusive, or he didn't have, one of his parents had passed away or something, and he was lashing out in whatever ways. So you never know what's going on in somebody else's life. So number one, it was sort of, reestablishing this guy that you thought you knew and be like, oh, okay, like his life wasn't as charmed, and certainly didn't turn out in a charmed way. And even though he's still rough around the edges and like, isn't, the warmest guy, we always talk about like, his first line in the show is great, more immigrants. So
Yeah.
it's not like, that's not a very welcoming,
Right. Right.
line. And then like, he doesn't even like step in to like, defend the kid who's getting beat up by a group of guys until like they push him into his car.
Right.
This is a
Right.
guy that like had withdrawn from society in certain ways, but he's sort of like this guy who was trapped in the past, and he was vulnerable, and he had, all these frustrations of living in the shadow of, this former, they always say, oh, he had this like, he lost a karate match 35 years ago. Yeah, but what if that guy who you lost to became the auto king of your town, and he's like using the karate in his marketing, and you see him on billboards everywhere you go and on commercials and things like that, as your life has gone down the toilet. So it was really working with Billy, um, to get that kind of performance. I think he always hit for Billy Zapka, like his whole thing was like, I don't want to come back and just like, be the asshole. I've like lived 35 years of people like just being like, oh, you're that dick.
Right.
And instead we're just like, trust us. People want to see you still be that dick. Like that's what people want to see, but they want to see the full picture of that guy, and they want to see that guy grow.
Right.
If we suddenly have it like in 35 years you've already grown, then where's the fun in that?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, he has a good soft side, and him playing drunk is really well. I know, I went to the conservatory acting school, so I know it's like when you try to play drunk, don't try to be drunk, because in reality, when you're drunk, you don't want to act drunk. You want to act like you're
yeah,
normal, but you can hear it a little bit. He did it. He did
yeah,
an amazing job. I mean, I
he's
love
the
him.
best.
But tell me about, how did you get? I love Martin. I'll tell you, that look right there, his look, experiencing, is just. I love this character. Like, how did you get him? Did he agree right away?
So Marty is, he's hilarious. He's embraced the Sensei Kreese persona for a long time.
Oh yeah.
He knows that it's a role that people love him in. He's been doing Comic Cons and things like that for a decade or more. So he understands. But despite like that look, you see that man.
Uh huh.
He's hilarious. He's hilarious. He's a hilarious East Coast guy
Yeah, he's a Brooklyn
who,
boy.
yeah, so he's very self-aware about what this character is, and plays into it really well. So when the show was coming together, like we actually didn't tell him until it was a reality, because we wanted to sell the story of like the rivalry first and foremost.
Hmm.
And then when it became real, then we would meet with Marty. And as soon as it became real, we took a meeting with Marty right away. And he was, for him, it's like, put me in, coach. Like he wanted to be there from the beginning. And we're like, no, 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 no. Like the way we want to tell this story is you coming into the story is a huge deal. So like, we're going to save you for the very last scene of the final episode of the first season. He's like, can I come in the fifth episode? Like he was just like, he wanted to be there because like, in TV, you always like, you never know if there's going to be another season.
Hmm.
But we entered this thing from a position of confidence the whole time. We believed that we were writing a story that audiences were going to love. and that we had, even though, we were at YouTube at the time, they were beyond supportive over there. So, we had the confidence that like, we're like, don't worry, Marty, like we're going to do a season that's going to work and we're going to get a second season. And when that season happens and you coming at the end of season one, it's going to make it where people are going to revolt if we don't have a second season.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then now that he's back in the mix, we have a blast with him.
He
He loves it.
on set. Is he hilarious? Is he the guy? Is he the jokester? Because that's what I feel about him.
No, he's just has a good energy about
Mm-hmm.
him all the time. He's, just he loves acting. He
Right.
loves performing. He loves, being in front of the camera. He's he when he's with us, he'll joke around, but he's also like, focused on the job at hand. He's
Right.
great.
Let me ask you this: with the cigar, was that his idea?
No, we wrote that into the script.
Oh,
We wrote
wow.
that in.
Okay.
We knew, we thought it would be a fun, badass move for him, and he happens to be a huge cigar smoker.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it worked out. It worked out beautifully.
Speaking of YouTube, John, were they like? Did they get hurt like when you left them? How does it work? Like you got YouTube the first 2 seasons, and then you tell YouTube, well, guess what? We're going to Netflix now.
It was the opposite of that. What happened was, when we sold the show to YouTube, they told us we're going to be competing with the big boys. We're going to be like, you'll be our House of Cards, because House of Cards is like the show that sort of built Netflix. And we're like, okay, great. And then like it felt that way. Season one, as we were making it, it was like, okay, you're feeling the love and all that stuff. We had a great time making the show there. But as like after the first season comes out, you start to see that, wait a second, like at YouTube, there wasn't real buy-in from Google above them. And
Mm-hmm.
and you realize, wait a second, they're like not like picking up some of these other shows. So we make season two, and that's all good. But then as after season two, you're like, wait a second, like they're like canceling everything, but they're keeping Cobra Kai because Cobra Kai is making them money. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to keep making Cobra Kai. And it's like suddenly you feel like you're on this platform. It's like being on a sports team. You like, you're a star player, you sign with a sports team, and then they're like, hey, guess what? We're going to stop playing football. Like our team is no
Right.
longer going to play football. And we're like, well, what are you going to do? And they're like, well, no, we're going to keep, like, you could keep playing football for us, but we're not going to be really doing football. And we're like, okay. So as we're making season three, we shot season three with YouTube. We were still with YouTube at the time, but the whole time we're feeling like they may call us and say like, this should like that we're done. And that's what happened. After we shot season three, they called us and they were just like, we've never had to make a call like this before. Like this is, the show's been a hit show. We love making it. The fans love it. The critics love it. But like we're stopping making TV shows. So we're going to go out with a bang. We're going to release season three. It's going to be awesome. And we were prepared mentally for this call. So in the call, we said, hold on for a second. We appreciate everything that you've done, but as you know, we've been wanting to tell, more seasons of the show. Please give us the opportunity to try selling it elsewhere and find a new home for it. And our partners there, who were wonderful to us, gave us that opportunity, and we ended up shifting the show over to Netflix at that point.
And then, when it came out on Netflix, the first 28 days, you had close to 50 million viewers, John.
It was literally it was literally everything that you dreamed it would be when you first started making the show. Like we always say, like, you don't like do a Karate Kid reboot or I should say continuation without expecting it to potentially be a global hit, because the Karate Kid's a global hit. You have the same characters, you're honoring the legacy, you're telling a fresh story. We believed that it was the kind of show that people, if they watch it, they would love it. And at YouTube, we had big numbers. We had great, the critics loved it. The people who we knew who actually saw the show loved it. But then you did realize that like most people that you knew hadn't seen the show. You knew that like, most people, your average, you go to a dinner party with your wife, or you're at like a thing with your kid's school, and you're talking to other parents, and they're like, oh, that's on YouTube Premium. You have to explain to them what the thing was. So when we conceived of the show, we always thought it should be on Netflix. The only reason we went to YouTube was because they, made us an offer we couldn't refuse. So we always thought that if we showed up on Netflix, that what happened would happen.
Hmm.
And but actually living the experience of it was way beyond what you could have ever dreamed.
So
It
pretty
was
much
definitely a thing.
you guys were the big fish in a small pond. That's what it was with YouTube,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So now you're back in New York with the premiere of Cobra Kai. It's in Tribeca. What was the reaction when you guys screened it out there?
It was amazing. It was, everything that you would want it to be. People reacting to the show, laughing at the moments you'd want them to laugh, shocked at the moments, surprised at the moments that you want them to be surprised. We started getting reviews on the show, and the reviews were great. So it was, you felt it's funny because when living that, we felt like we had a huge TV show. We felt like, even though it was this YouTube thing, you felt like it was big. I was on the Howard Stern wrap up show with the guys. I did that both after seasons 1 and 2. I was, couldn't have felt better about how things were going there. And to see those first 2 seasons where both those premieres were amazing for us, and then to see those 2 seasons which had already been out for a long time show up on Netflix, and suddenly, like, overnight, like, literally everyone I know has seen the show now.
Yeah.
It was you realize just the difference.
Wow. And the shooting locations, you actually shot season 2 in LA just one time?
Yeah, in season 2 we had one day in Los Angeles. Um, so it's and we had 2 units, and you're just hustling. You're going everywhere. Like, we shoot the show typically. Most of it's in Atlanta. Season 1 we had 2 or 3 days in Los Angeles. Season 2 we had a day in Los Angeles. Season 3 we had a couple days in Okinawa. Um,
Wow.
so that was cool. But, like, it's always been done on, like, a much lower budget than a lot of other shows
Yeah.
have.
What was the hardest as far as creating a location, like a studio setup? I'm assuming it was Mr. Miyagi's home, and that's what I'm thinking. The cars and all that. Was that the hardest thing to do?
Mr. Miyagi's home was amazing work by Ryan Berg, our production designer. He took photos from all the old movies, and had to sort of piece it together. He didn't have, like, the floor plan or anything like that.
Hmm.
He just had to sort of take images and recreate it. And Ralph Macchio always tells the story of, like, when he walked in that yard again for the first time, it was like he was transported back to childhood. It was crazy for him. And the car that I see you have up there,
Hmm.
Ralph Macchio actually owns that car. That was the original car,
Oh,
from the Karate Kid, that they gave him after he made the third movie. The studio gave him that car, and he's had it all these years ever since. So he lent it to the production.
wow. And when it comes to auditioning the young kids, John, like a Sholo, was it how many auditions did he have to go through? Was there a lot? Was it how it is traditionally? You have an audition, then you have a producer callback, then you have a studio testing, then you have a network testing. How did it happen with
Uh,
Sholo?
it's funny because that character is so important, and he was the very first audition tape that we saw on Cobra Kai, and we're like, oh wow, this guy's great. Okay, this is going to be easier to cast than we thought. And then we saw a bunch of other auditions, and they were like, no one was at his level. But still, after that, we did callbacks where we were actually in the same room with him, and a bunch of other actors. And then we narrowed it down to, like, a few other guys and him. And then we did some chemistry reads with him, and we did stuff with him and Billy Zabka. We did stuff with him and Mary Mauser, who ended up playing Samantha.
Mhm.
And we did some chemistry reads to make sure that that was working. And those were, I think he probably came in 4 or 5 times overall before he got hired.
Wow. So and why him? Because you felt like he was the most talented. Did you want a Latin actor, or did you was it specifically with that race?
He was always Miguel Diaz. We wanted it to be true to the San Fernando Valley. We wanted it
Hmm.
to be, we liked the culture clash that Daniel and Mr. Miyagi had back in the day, and we felt like this was something that would be great. We love the idea of, different people from different backgrounds who can form a, sort of a loving, surrogate father, surrogate son kind of relationship.
Right.
So from the beginning it was Migueldiaz. And, when it came to Xolo, it was, we wanted somebody who could be the lovable underdog, but grow into, a karate champion who's could be a bit badass as well.
So how exciting is it now? You have season 4 got picked up. I mean, can you give us any spoiler alerts when you guys shooting that? I mean,
I'm not able to say. The plan is early next year. We've written most of the scripts already with our team, and still working out the kinks of that stuff as we do. But we're ahead of the game as where we typically are at this stage, and when we enter production, we'll have most of the season written. So yeah, hopefully early next year.
did you guys shoot season 3 during COVID, or is this before COVID?
Season 3 was not only shot, but it was fully edited before COVID. It was just as COVID was starting
Wow.
to happen. We were doing like our final like ADR sessions with some actors and things like that. But like the whole season was ready to go, in March basically.
So I would say what, 50 hours. Season 3 will be launched on Netflix January 1st. And I think that was a great idea what you guys did for January 1st, because you're thinking, all right, New Year's Eve, people are going to sit home all day. The only competition you have the college football game, the Final Four game, but which is no big deal. Guys could watch Netflix a little later. It's still there. But listen, I have to say, I'm a huge fan of the Karate Kid back in the film, and I always tell these young kids, I say, "Are you watching this show called Cobra Kai?" And they're like, "I heard of it." I'm like, "Okay, before you watch it, I really want you to watch the first film, The Karate Kid. Don't worry about 2 or 3. Just watch the first one, and then you could understand what's going on." And they're like, "Oh, okay, okay." And all of a sudden, these young kids, I'm talking about 20, in their 20s, are like, "Yo, Eddie, man, I love this show. Holy shit, I'm addicted to it." You know what I mean? I'm like, "Well, there you go. I told you." Because a lot of people like, what TV shows you suggest on Netflix to watch? And I always say number 1 is Cobra Kai, without a doubt.
Well, I appreciate it. I think that's been fun. It was by design. We always wanted to be a show that people of all ages can enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And, we wanted people to fall in love with the young cast the way we fell in love with, Johnny and Daniel and, Allie back in the day. That was sort of the goal from the beginning. And it's been amazing to see, especially since it's been on Netflix, there's just a lot of family viewing of the show is what
Yeah,
we've been hearing from people. Like I know a lot of people who's like 8-year-olds are obsessed with the show.
yeah.
I get the Facebook messages from plenty of friends who are talking about that. It's nuts. It's been great.
John, how long did it take you to craft when Johnny Lawrence threw the phone, and then all of a sudden at the end of season 2, it says Allie accepts your friend requests? Who came up with that idea? How long did that take to craft? I mean, come on, man, that was genius by you guys.
That was something that we knew at the end of the season we wanted to have that happen. It's one of those things like Hayden, Josh, and I. We plan the whole season usually together, and then we share it with the writers' room the things that we want to do. And that was something that we had from the beginning. It's we have these big tentpole moments that you think about, and we really. That was one that we just felt like we always want to end the season in a way that makes people want to see more. We always want to end the episodes in a way that make you want to like come back for the next episode. So that was one of those things that we thought would be a fun way to a lot of bad stuff happens at the end of season 2. So let's give a little hope at the end.
Oh, of course. But how long did that scene take? That fighting scene? Oh my god, at the school.
At the school, it's
How many
funny,
days did that take?
I'd say like two and a half
That's it?
days. And we're hustling. We're hustling at this show. It's like we have an amazing stunt team, and the
Mhm.
kids are super dedicated to like work on the weekends and things like that. But we didn't have a lot of time to shoot. Like I said, our budget's not quite there, but we had to shoot over 2 weekends everything that we needed to film in that high school, which was not only the fights, but it was like every other scene that takes place in that high school. So there's like Stingray getting interviewed, there's the kids in the classrooms, all that stuff. And then literally everything in the hospital was also at that school. They had like, it was actually like a college of some sort that had like a hospital kind of thing there. So we had to shoot all of the scenes, the aftermath scenes in the hospital as well. So we had 4 days to shoot all of that. So we had a lot of times we had multiple units going at once, and the final day was a ton of fighting to shoot, and literally everything in the hospital were the 2 units going at the same time.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Listen, John, you've been amazing, man. I finally got you. I mean, I've been asking you since August. Come on my show. And you're like, I got you. Don't worry, just give me some time. Look,
Yeah.
I really appreciate this. You know, I just want young writers to get inspired by your story, how you believed in the impossible to be possible. And that's what my show's about. It's the journey of how people got there. And
Well, thanks so much, man. It's been great being on here, and thanks for bringing Doc on. That's insane. That was an insane moment. I was having some technical difficulties during it, so I wasn't able to ask him more questions.
but
But
you know what,
I'll
John,
need
I
him. I'll
got
need
you
him
back
next time.
when, you know, he actually texted me earlier and he says, I'll tell you right now what he says. He says, great guy, make sure you give him my number.
Awesome. I love
You
it.
know?
Hey, this is Jon Hurwitz of Cobrakai. You got to make sure to subscribe to my buddy Eddie Mata's YouTube channel, Facebook page, like it all. I had a blast on the show, and you'll have a blast watching.